I don't know how this started, but my dad got the notion to take the family on day trips during the summer to go crabbing. It doesn't seem like an organic thought for an immigrant family living in urban New England in the 70s, but there we were, in the early morning, piling into Dad's Ford LTD Country Squire station wagon. It was Ford's big, top-of-the-line model, the one with the molded vinyl side panels and a faux wood finish. The back of the station wagon was filled with an assortment of gear: fishing rods, nets, an old plastic tackle box, a stack of wooden baskets, and a big plastic bag of raw chicken necks that my father had brought home from the restaurant the night before. The early morning sun was beginning to peek out over the buildings of Lower Alston, a mix of charmless cinder-block industrial buildings and 3- or 4-story apartment blocks built in the early 20th century. We lived a quarter-mile from the Mass Pike entrance. Our apartment building was located across the street from the backyard of an auto body shop. The rusted steel sign perched on the corner of the low brick shop building read "Foreign Auto Body" in faded blue lettering. Many years later, I would find out that the comedian and late-night talk show host Jay Leno had worked there. The yard was enclosed by a tall chain-link fence, crowned with a serpentine spiral of barbed wire, and looked like a mini prison holding a hardcore population of broken cars, stacks of old tires, an assortment of car doors and hoods, crabgrass, rotten asphalt, and a loud, toothy German shepherd. I wouldn't say he was aggressive, just very committed to his job. Around the corner, there was Clemens, our neighborhood grocery store, a liquor store, Mike's convenience store, and another block of apartments. Across the street was a gas station, a muffler shop, another apartment building, and then a block of single-family homes. There were schools, churches, laundromats, playgrounds, and banks within a 15-minute walk. 2 nearby bus lines took you into town, or points north or west. Alston was the kind of place that rarely exists anymore. It was the kind of place where you didn't need a car to have a life. There was little traffic on the early morning streets. The occasional hum of a passing car or truck broke the stillness of a neighborhood yet to waken. Soon, we added our lonely voice to the sparse chorus as we made our way to the Mass Pike entrance ramp for the hour-long drive to Fall River. The marina was just off the highway. You wouldn't know it was there from the road, except for the bait shop poking out like a lone barnacle just off the shoulder of the road. A motley assortment of outboard motors was lined up in front of a weathered shack, like horses tied up in front of the saloon in an old Randolph Scott Western. Some looked relatively new. Others looked like they came from a different era. They were inscribed with names like Mercury, Evinrude, and Elgin. The older motor names were raised chrome ornaments, like the badges on cars. The names on the newer models were silk-screened onto their plastic motor housings. Dad disappeared into the bait shop. A few minutes later, he emerged and nodded. With our gear under our arms, we carefully made our way down the narrow, uneven, weed-choked steps to the marina, which stretched out into the water from the bottom of the embankment like the dismembered, mangled hand of some ancient titan. The marina, a ramshackle collection of tar-soaked wooden platforms tied together with thick metal chains, looked more like an accidental arrangement formed by the weather and the tide than a product of any conscious effort. The nest of floating platforms bumped and creaked with the tide. A dozen small boats nestled between the fingers of the dock. Everything looked ancient, worn down by the sun and the passage of time. Dad and my older brother grabbed the fishing gear and got into one of the aluminum rowboats. As they started to row out to the middle of the estuary, Our mom measured out long lengths of cotton twine from a large spool. She tied one end of the string to the edge of the docks, and every few feet she would tie a chicken neck. It looked like a chicken neck necklace. She tossed the tethered anatomy into the water, and we waited for the crabs to take notice. But waiting doesn't come naturally or easily to a couple of 10-year-old boys hopped up on a steady diet of sugar and Saturday morning cartoons, so waiting for the crabs to bite lasted all of 10 minutes before we were off to find another adventure. Removed from our toys and TV shows, the not-so-child-friendly environment of a rundown marina tested our meager patience. We explored the docks, tried to catch the tiny shrimp that wandered too close to the surface of the water, and within our reach. We watched dragonflies and whatever fauna conduct their business near the water's surface. We played as best as we could. The sun beat down on the marina. The buzz of insects mixed with the hum of the traffic from the road above. As the afternoon wore on, my mother slowly filled the wooden baskets with the crabs, unlucky enough to latch onto those chicken necks floating beckoningly in the water. When our imaginations ran their course with the marina, we would beg our mother for money. Scrambling up the stairs to the road with 2 quarters and 2 dimes in hand, we launched ourselves through the bait shop door, out of the heat and into the air conditioning. My brother and I pushed back the heavy metal lid to the cooler, and we each fished out our choice of soda pop, usually a grape or orange Fanta. We gave the man behind the counter our money and sat outside on the stoop next to the outboard motors to enjoy our beverages. The glass soda bottles were so cold that they stung our hands. We had to switch hands every few minutes to make the burning numbness bearable. Once we refueled ourselves with high-octane sugar, we went back down to the water to help our mother and to play. As the sun crept closer toward the horizon and our baskets were nearly filled with crab, our mother decided it was time to wind things down. My brother and I ran to the furthest platform and started waving our arms and screaming at the top of our lungs. We were scarcely aware that the tiny fleck floating on the waterline of the estuary that was our father's rowboat was probably nearly half a mile away, and that they could not see us, let alone hear our screams at such a distance. But my brother and I tried our best. Eventually, our father and oldest brother would make their way back to us, darkened by the sun and dripping with sweat. They were tired, but triumphant. The empty plastic bucket they'd set out with several hours earlier had a few new occupants, 3 fish. They were dull brown and steel-colored. I don't recall the species. The ride home was like many after a long day playing in the summer heat. We spent most of the way home sleeping while our father drove. The summer haze dissipated into the darkening sky. The inside of the station wagon now smelled of heat and brine and crab, and of something slightly rotten. A faint hint of decay, not quite sulphurous, but sulfur adjacent. It was the smell of the marina in our hair and our clothes. The crabs rode in the back with the fish. I looked in on them as we set off for home. I could see their tiny crustacean, alien faces, non-committal about their current plight. Their eyes, like black beads, shine from between the thin wooden slats of the baskets. Silvery bubbles formed at their mouths and disappeared below their chin. I wondered what they thought, as my own thoughts eventually drifted off to sleep.